Hello and welcome back. My name's Rosie,
And my name is Paul.
and this
Is
is Sinister.
Sinister.
So, today's story isn't a usual case. This isn't a big murder situation. There was never any trial to determine if this was a murder, but it is one that I'm super fascinated with. So, today we will be discussing the mysterious and tragic death of indie rock artist Elliott Smith. And I am going into this one because I have been a fan of his music for years, and there seems to have always been a lot of speculation surrounding his death. So, I think we should discuss it.
And what kind of music was Elliott Smith?
Indie rock.
Indie rock.
Yeah,
Was he American or Australian?
American.
American. Was he a band?
He was in a band called Heat Miser, and then he ended up on his own. We'll get into a bit of his work, but did a bit of work for movies and stuff.
What kind of movies?
Good Will Hunting.
I heard that.
Yeah, so I think he was a bit more indie, like not as well known in the beginning, and then his name kind of got out there a bit more.
Have you some of his music?
Yes, would you like me to play it?
Yes, please.
If I'm playing it though, I have to cut out the audio.
Oh no, but I was trying to get the audience. That's it.
Yeah, I'd say I just get done for copyright.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
We won't get to legal matters.
So on the 21st of October 2003, Elliott was only 34 years old when he was found standing with a knife in his chest by his girlfriend Jennifer Chiba in their Los Angeles home. There was
She found him.
She found him.
What was her name?
Jennifer Chiba.
Okay.
There was an apparent suicide note left on a table, and his death has always been reported as a suicide. But was this a suicide or something much more sinister?
Ooh.
So, let me tell you the story of Elliott Smith. I will say too that there is a lot of speculation and hearsay throughout this case, and it will also have a bit of mention, super brief, of unconfirmed child abuse, including sexual, but it is very brief, no detail at all. Elliott was born Stephen Paul Smith on the 6th of August, 1969, in Omaha, Nebraska, to parents Bunny and Gary Smith. He was only 6 months old when his parents divorced, and Elliott and his mother moved to Texas. Elliott spent most of his childhood in Texas, but seemed to have a tumultuous relationship with his stepfather Charlie Welch, who Bunny married when Elliott was 4.
His mother was separated from his father.
Yeah, parents were separated and they lived in different towns.
But Elliott grew up with his mother.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, nothing has ever been investigated and confirmed, but Elliott has mentioned physical and emotional abuse, as well as mentions that he may have been sexually abused by Charlie while he was growing up. Charlie has denied all sexual abuse allegations, but he has taken some accountability for the physical and emotional abuse. These themes are prevalent in a lot of Elliott's earlier albums, and there's implications in his music that his mother too was being abused by Charlie. One of my favourite songs is called Waltz Number 2, XO, and seems to be him reminiscing about his mother, but part of the lyrics are, "She appears composed, so she is, I suppose, who can really tell? She shows no emotion at all, stares into space like a dead China doll." And I think it's a very powerful song with those lyrics. I also think about people who go through domestic violence, who, when they do kind of give into it in a sense, like they've kind of just, this is what my life is now, they do kind of end up looking a bit like into space at like a dead China doll, for lack of better words.
Yeah, they kind of was that. This is her life. She can't talk to anyone.
Yeah, I think it
She
does.
don't expose
Yeah.
Charlie.
Yeah.
So, stupid love.
Yeah, it is. No, it is. And it's terrible, but I think it's like once you're at the point where you're like, this is my life, you just kind of succumb to it.
Can't see any road out.
No, but you do, in a sense, I'd say a lot of people do end up losing a bit of themselves inside, if that makes sense. And that's when I think the whole dead China doll comes into it. But due to the abuse that Elliott was experiencing, he ended up moving in with his father, Gary, when he was about 13 to 14 to escape his stepfather. Now, Gary had since moved to Portland, Oregon, so Elliott moved there for the remainder of his teenage years. It seemed as if Elliott had quite an estranged relationship with his mother after that, but expressed his love for her regularly. It seemed to be a matter of needing to get away from Charlie exclusively. In the same song as I mentioned, the lyrics continue, "I'm never going to know you now, but I'm going to love you anyhow," which I think encouraged that notion that he loves her, but they don't have a chance to have that close relationship after he left Texas. But yeah, he needed to get away from Charlie by the sounds of things.
Yeah, but I suppose, look, he was probably running away, but he was leaving his mother after him.
Yeah.
Like, if he was running to his father, would his father not kind of say, why are you running away from home with that?
Was his father just like, oh, yay, my child wants to come and live with me now?
I suppose the child is 13. You surely know that he's after going through some bit of trauma in his life.
I have a feeling Elliott didn't disclose this with his dad just based on certain things, but it didn't seem like Gary had any idea that this had happened, kind of thing.
Oh, Gary's the father then.
Gary's the father. In an interview with Under the Radar magazine, Elliott was asked what encouraged him to move from Texas, and he said it was the domestic situation, but that he didn't want to dredge it up because that's been worked out with him and the person, and that they don't need to feel bad about it forever. So I'd say there was the sense that he had forgiven Charlie for what had happened.
But you're not to forgive him because he was out running away from it.
Yeah, but
He's
sorry,
moving to a different state.
this interview was years later when
Elliott
would have been in his 20s.
Okay.
Yeah, this was after Elliott's fame. So yeah, into his 20s, that's when this came out. So Charlie and Bunny ended up having 2 other children together. So Elliott had a younger half-sister, Ashley, and half-brother, Darren. I don't really like the term half-sibling. I think they're just your siblings, but that's what it's described as in this case, so I'll just be saying that. It did seem like Elliott cared about his siblings a lot, and it seemed like he was particularly close with Ashley as they grew older.
That's what it has to be half siblings. Like, only one parent, you only half the parents.
I know, but
You don't have the same parents.
No, and I know that technically it's half sibling, but I just think you're either siblings or you're not. A lot of Bunny's family were musicians and had something to do with music in some way while working normal jobs. In an interview, Elliott was asked at what age did he realize he wanted to become a musician, to which he responded, probably 5. As soon as I heard the White Album, it was pretty much my inspiration. That and AC/DC.
Oh, he was an AC/DC fan.
I think he was.
Go on, the Elliott cat.
I left that
Thunder.
I left that in just for you. And also to clarify, the White Album was a Beatles album, so it was the Beatles and AC/DC seemed to be his inspiration.
Be good taste.
Do you like the Beatles?
I'd like the Beatles. I'd like AC/DC more, but
I know you like AC/DC more. So Elliott began learning piano from 9 years old and then did a year of guitar lessons from 10 years old. Around the age of 11, Gary had bought Elliott an acoustic guitar to practice with. Elliott did a lot of self-teaching with the guitar. He stated in an interview that he and his friends would teach themselves guitar in 1980. He said he was really into the Beatles songs and cool kaleidoscopic chord changes, which I'm not sure what that means.
Music terms, I'd be thinking.
Music terms. He just said he was totally immersed in trying to figure it all out. Elliott ended up joining the school choir and started writing his own music in his spare time. He further picked up the instruments, the clarinet, bass guitar, drums, and the harmonica. He's described as having a distinctive vocal style with a whispery, spiderweb thin delivery.
So he must have came from a music background, so his mother and his father.
Yes. His mum had lots of musicians in her family.
Like, musicians are people that can express themselves. You say, like, why would his mother stay in a
bad relationship?
An abusive relationship. Like, musicians of all people are able to express themselves.
Do you know what? For all I really know, maybe she wasn't in a bad relationship.
Or was Charlie into music?
I have no idea if he had any interest in music at all.
Yeah, like that. They're musical people. That would they meet through music or?
Yeah, I get to thinking. I don't know. It was during high school that he changed his name to Elliott. He stated that the name Stephen was too bookish and Steve sounded like a jock's name, and he didn't like that. Friends later speculated that he didn't want to be confused with Steve Smith, the drummer of Journey, but Elliott never confirmed this publicly. Elliott ended up going to Hampshire College in Massachusetts. There he obtained a bachelor's degree in philosophy and legal theory. He met fellow musician Neil Gust while in college, and the two began playing music together. They brought in a guy named Tony, who Elliott had gone to school with, and another member to start up the band named Heat Miser. Elliott was only 21 when the band formed. The band stayed together long enough to release 3 entire albums together, but Elliott really wanted to do his own thing and have more control over the music and sound, which is when he went out on his own. He wanted more of a grunge sound with his music, and he said Heat Miser had more of an aggressive, loud tone. I don't think Heat Miser was a super financially successful band, as Elliott discussed being on unemployment benefits for some time while in this band.
But Heat Miser, they kind of sound more AC/DC type style, no?
I'd say they were a bit more rocky, whereas his music's a bit more gentle.
Yeah, he's kind of more like kind of the monkey style music.
Who are the Monkeys?
Did I hear the Monkeys?
No, we're talking about, and they've got a song in Shrek, aren't we?
The Monkeys, they were popular bands back in the 60s, American style band.
Are they the ones in there? I'm a believer.
Yeah, that's the ones. Yeah, the ones. Yeah, the Monkeys. They actually had their own show. They used to have their own show. Remember watching it as you?
About monkeys?
Not about monkeys, but the Monkeys. Monkees. Not the ones you find in the zoo.
Was it a cartoon though, or was it an actual
It was
show?
not a cartoon.
Oh, I'm just picturing them as monkeys.
It wasn't monkeys. They'd be playing their music.
Yeah.
Hey, we're the Monkeys. We're just mucking around. We're too busy singing. Let anybody down. Hey!
No, they do not. They do not have a song like that.
Yes, they do. Check it out. Check it out.
Okay. Elliott was putting out albums and doing well on his own. His first album was super well received and, quote, immediately eclipsed Heat Miser. So he continued just releasing music. Elliott expressed being really lucky that he was able to make music and perform as a job. In 1997, a few of Elliott's songs, including Miss Misery, were included in the soundtrack for Good Will Hunting, which was a major movie as we discussed just before. Here, Elliott's career reached a more mainstream audience and he became more known to the public. He was nominated for an Academy Award in 1998 for the Best Original Song category with the song Miss Misery and performed at the ceremony, but only after producers informed him if he didn't do it, someone else would perform his song. I feel like Elliott is more of like the surly, reserved kind of guy. Didn't really care about the fame or the fortune that came with music, just kind of wanted to be able to perform and maybe earn enough to perform.
I just wanted to express his own music.
Yeah, I don't think performing at the Academy Awards was something he really cared for by the sound of things. But I'd say too, if it came to someone else playing his song instead of him, I think he would have been the one who would. That's where he's like drawing the line. It's my music, I'm going to play it.
Well, that makes sense.
Absolutely. But the song didn't win the Academy Award and Elliott didn't seem to care. He appeared to find it an honour that he was ever nominated and just enjoyed releasing good music, whatever happened to it. Now, at some point throughout his life, Elliott was diagnosed with ADHD and depression. He quite outwardly suffered with his bad mental health and seemed to use drink and drugs to cope. Elliott included themes of not being happy in his music, and there were songs that seemed to indicate a type of desire to not be alive, and mentions of different feelings and emotions he had. He seemed to really use his music as a type of diary where he mentioned what he was feeling. Think Kurt Cobain-esque. But also not to say that everything he's able to put in a song must be directly linked to him and exactly how he's feeling at any given time. I think there was a sense of like storytelling with his music as well. It wasn't all self-reflection.
More or less was, wasn't it?
It was for a lot of it, but there also seemed to be him telling stories from other people's perspectives and things like that.
I think you're saying the majority was for his own derby.
It was very dark and dreary.
And not his derby, like his music was his derby.
He had, I think that was how he expressed his feelings. But he was asked in an interview with NME what makes him so sad, and he answered that he's not sad. There just has to be a certain amount of darkness in my songs for the happiness to matter. Just because I'm not singing about sex and sports doesn't mean I'm sad.
Sex and sports?
I know. Who's singing about sports?
I suppose even back then, there aren't too many people singing about sex either.
Back in the 90s? Late 90s?
I suppose 90s, yeah. They put this in. Still don't be no songs really about sports.
There'd
be chants and things at sports.
Well, no. I think he was more so just kind of trying to make a point, but I do understand what you're saying. But I think he was kind of there being like, you know, all the popular topics that like people want to hear about. He's not going to share. Elliott ended up releasing 5 solo albums between 1994 and 2000. Sometime around 1998, Elliott fell into quite an extreme depression where he was discussing openly his considerations of suicide, and on one known occasion allegedly attempted suicide by jumping off a cliff while severely intoxicated. He wouldn't discuss this event with the public. When it was brought up, he'd asked to discuss something else. He did end up saying in one interview that he jumped off a cliff but it didn't work. He said it was in North Carolina and it wasn't like he made up his mind to throw himself off a cliff. He got freaked out and started running. It was dark and he ran off the edge of a cliff. He said it wasn't like he was thinking he would throw himself off a cliff and die. It just happened. but he landed on a tree and punctured his body. I don't know where exactly.
So he was just drinking drugs.
I'd
Yeah,
say it
so
was like a drink and drugs
probably just
field.
like Cliff Note was just a bit of a hint.
From my understanding, he had no idea there was a drop there. Other people were there sharing the story, and they were like, he just started running. It was dark. He had no idea.
He could have tripped over something, just rolled down the hill. It might even be
But like everyone wants some
drama.
Elliott tried to kill himself story. Merely speculation. It does just sound like a drug-infused incident more so than a suicide attempt.
I think just more of a buzz.
Other people have discussed these times, explaining of numerous occasions where people stayed up late into the night or early morning with Elliott, encouraging him not to end his own life. The thing is, I feel like not a lot of people said anything while he was around, but as soon as Elliot's passed away, suddenly people are sharing, oh, we had to try and stop him from doing this and that.
Well, sure, look, that's going to be the way all the time. People are just looking for get their tuppence in. Sure, look, he was probably just living the life. He was young.
Yeah. I'm not saying he never...
Making money. Sure, look, yeah. So just face off his tits and drinking drugs. Oh, God, you're going to go into depression.
Yeah, like, but also too, I'm sorry, but if one of your friends or someone you're close with is there and you have to stay up late into the night convincing them not to kill themselves, are you not calling someone else for help? I just feel like that is where you call professionals.
I know, but it's only hearsay talk from a so-called friend.
Yeah, so around this time, Elliott continued writing and releasing music, and he was only growing more popular, which had him touring more. There seemed to be a few occasions where he couldn't play certain songs. I've seen videos of him cutting short the song Waltz No. 2 XO, which is the song I discussed before. There was a few times where he said he either wasn't playing it well and wanted to end because there wasn't any point playing a song he couldn't do properly, or he was just sick of playing it and it was overplayed. Everyone wanted to hear that song and he would just give up. And there was one time I watched it and it was right at the very end. He probably only had like a handful of lines left and he was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And he just stopped playing the song. You can argue that that's due to his emotional response to the song or him simply feeling like it was overplayed. But to be fair, like, it's a good song. I wonder what was going on with him.
It is, I suppose, yeah, but you look, he just gets shit sick of it, would he?
I can imagine if you've written all these amazing songs and one has really taken off and that's the one everyone expects you to play every single time.
Like you probably put the same amount of work to every song he wrote.
Yeah.
And how just one will famous. Like, why don't you listen to my other songs?
Yeah. He just probably had so much emotion towards all of his songs as well.
It's like us doing this podcast. We don't want people just to listen to one. We want to listen to all of our podcasts. We all be equally as good as each other.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'd say there's some that are better than others.
But that's totally the case. It's not the quality the way they come out.
Yeah, okay, yeah. But that's the thing too. Like, music which is popular does come down to the listeners. Some people like certain things. I never knew anyone knew that song, Waltz No. 2. And then we were out for dinner one night at the Abbey and it played there.
So, get popular in Ballyvorney.
And I was very shocked.
Which is in Cork, which is in Ireland.
Because we're in Ireland.
Yes.
Elliot's music continued to include darker themes of drug use, death, depression, and expressed feeling sadness and at times heartbreak. In 1991, he moved to Los Angeles and continued performing and just enjoying being an artist. In 1991, he moved to Los Angeles. He did a few different interviews on late night television, which I feel shows a certain level of superstardom. I feel like you have to be quite up there to start getting onto late night television. You know, like Conan O'Brien and things like that.
Yeah, I suppose, look, that's hit the popularity scene.
Yeah, so he kind of reached that level at this point, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. You sure that was 91, not 2001?
Did he move to LA?
Yeah.
It was 91. Why? No. Oh, well, hold up. In 1999, he moved to Los Angeles. So whether this was due to his newfound fame or what, I'm not sure. But this was around the time Elliott seemed to have become addicted to heroin. He was such an amazing and talented musician, but there were concerts people attended in which he could barely function on stage, and it was said he had an expensive addiction which seemed to have left him completely non-functioning on several occasions. It got to 2001 and Elliott was recording what would be his final album, and he began showing signs of paranoia. He told people a white van was following him, and he thought his record label was out to get him. He spoke of his home being broken into and said that songs were stolen off his computer, and he believed it was the record label doing this. During this time, it was stated that he hardly ate. His main food intake was ice cream, and he would go several days without sleep and then spend an entire day just sleeping and then repeat the cycle again. He had friendships with music partners falling apart due to his substance dependency, and everything seemed a bit heavy in his life. He expressed being sad over friendships falling apart to the point he scrapped over half an album of their work together as he couldn't listen to it after falling out, as it made him feel depressed. Which, chucking out half of an entire album is really hectic.
But like he was off his head. He didn't know what he was doing. Like heroin had him fucked up, so.
Yeah, major depressants too. Drugs, alcohol, everything. He would probably be absolutely miserable at the time. Around this time, Elliott ended up sending executives at his record label DreamWorks a message stating that if they didn't release him from his contract, he would take his own life. Which, hectic, it's a massive threat, but what was in that contract that he felt the need to get out so desperately?
I suppose the contract was had to perform, had to show up in places,
Yeah,
had to do shows, had to do interviews. Like,
and he wasn't functioning to do that.
I'm sure if you weren't able to finish songs.
Yeah, no, it's super sad. His life just seemed very sad at this time. So he began recording the album with different artists who reported that Elliott was now smoking over $1,500 worth of heroin and crack each day. Again, hearsay after his death, so
Yeah, it's like $1,500.
that's a lot of money.
That's a lot of drugs.
It is a lot.
In a day.
In a
Jesus
day.
Christ,
And he talked about suicide and on several occasions attempted to overdose on those drugs. Again, you would think $1,500 is enough.
That's an overdose, is it?
Yeah, you're doing. Yeah, there's not a hope you're doing that every day and surviving it.
I don't know recording albums on top of it,
No, I don't think you're doing much on top of that. Also, $1,500 a day, where do you get all... Like, he was a successful musician, but he was struggling to perform at this point. So other people working with Elliott at the time expressed him being in a bad state, failing to record music for movies in time, and just not being reliable like he'd previously been. His live performances between 2001 and 2002 were infrequent, and he stayed near his home in Los Angeles in order to perform. He never he'd never toured overseas or anything during this time.
But did you ever do any overseas tours?
He'd done lots of overseas touring prior to this.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Like,
Asia, like all around. I'd say he would have done Europe because I think he's quite big in like the indie rock scene of back then, where it's like the English rock kind of scene.
And would he not have gone to Australia?
Yeah, in 1999, I think was the last year he was in Australia.
Would you not have gone to his concert back then?
When I was 2.
Yeah.
Now, there were a few reviews of his concerts at this time, with people expressing concern over his appearance, stating he looked gaunt and unmaintained, with a beard and greasy hair, and apparent loss of memories when it came to his own lyrics. He wasn't able to perform like he could before. He was barely completing full set lists, and sometimes he wasn't even able to perform one song in its entirety. So he was just, completely different. It's quite sad. In one crowded show, he appeared to have fallen asleep, afterwards apologizing to the audience, saying, "I'm sorry, I can't remember the words, I'm so fucked up." There was another concert that I heard stories about where people... It was kind of, they were taking the piss afterwards, but he was playing and suddenly stopped and just kept flinging his hand around, saying, "It's just like I've got goo on my fingers that I can't get rid of," or something like that. And he would not, he was not himself at this time. It was
not a time to be performing.
Absolutely not a time to be in the public eye. Now, it was sometime between 1999 and 2002 that Elliott met fellow musician Jennifer Chiba. She was in a band, and apparently Elliott saw her playing and asked a mutual friend to introduce the two. However, all of this information comes from Jennifer, and she's not the most consistent with their backstory. Going off 1999 to 2002, I would say they met closer to 2002 than 1999.
Yeah, he was kind of in a different zone.
Well, going on that, a few people on Elliott's side later stated that Jennifer got Elliott drugs early on as a way into his life, thinking she was with him in an attempt to score with him. Apparently, Jennifer started out as being Elliott's heroin dealer, and then a relationship pursued from there. There are numerous different tellings of events. Some say he had nothing to do with her until 2002, but Elliot's not here to confirm, but it would be interesting if she was his dealer first.
How'd you know how to get his weakness?
I don't know. I guess you do research or praise.
But was she successful?
On her own right with her band, I don't believe so. Definitely not as successful as Elliott, by the sounds of things. Her band ends up breaking up. On November 25th, 2002, Elliott was involved in a brawl with the Los Angeles Police Department at another band's concert. The officers allegedly beat and arrested him and his girlfriend Jennifer. The pair spent the night in jail, and Elliott's back was injured. This had him cancelling a number of his shows. Friends expressed their concern over Elliott at this time and the way he was reacting to substances. Elliott attempted to go to rehab on several occasions, but he struggled to relate to the popular 12-step program that's supposed to be followed. He said he couldn't do the first step. He said he couldn't say what he was supposed to say and mean it. People stated that Jennifer was never once seen taking Elliott to the rehab centre or related appointments. In 2002, Elliott went to the Neurotransmitter Restoration Centre in Beverly Hills to start a course of treatment for substance use disorder. Elliott said during this time, he was going into the centre to have an IV treatment of a drip bag full of amino acids and saline. He said he was coming off a lot of medications, including antipsychotics, even though he's not psychotic. He said the centre returned his brain to a pre-drug problem state, and it seemed to have worked. Elliott appeared to be wanting to better himself. It sounded like he was doing well to stay away from all drug use and only really having his prescribed medication for depression and ADHD. He still drank alcohol, but the drugs were gone.
You got off the heroin.
And the meth. He sold out 2 acoustic concerts in Hollywood for January 31st and February 1st, 2003, and he seemed to be wanting to re-establish his credibility as a performer and was doing what he could to prove to the world he could be himself again. He started a foundation for abused children and expressed wanting to tour non-stop to help fund this charity and get it up and running properly. He was very dedicated to a cause at the time, really wanting to better the world. After his 34th birthday on the 6th of August 2003, Elliott gave up alcohol as well and was really improving his life after years of inner turmoil. He was experimenting more with music and became more reliable for music soundtracks again, as his music did do so well in movies. So he's gotten off the drugs, he's now off drinking as well, which I think is a good step if you are trying to get sober. Kind of stay away from everything, because I think one thing kind of can encourage the other.
Yeah, surely. He was kind of taking things a bit more serious in his career.
Yeah, getting back to himself. On September 19, 2003, Elliott played his final show at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City. The final song he played was Long, Long, Long by the Beatles, who he'd expressed as being a massive inspiration for him all along. He had interviews where he was saying he wasn't depressed, just sad sometimes, and he was human. He likes expressing in his music feelings everyone feels at some point in their life. He had also been reported as being a lot more optimistic since getting clean, and one friend said it was like the dark cloud that followed him had begun to dissipate. Elliott was actively working on an album titled From a Basement on the Hill. He had even contacted people from his past to help work on it. He was healing now and sober, and old Elliott appeared to be back and wanting his old life again. So one of his friends, Larry Crane, who was a recording engineer, had been contacted by Jennifer to help finish the album. Larry said he spoke to Elliott for the first time in over a year and then juggled his own schedule to be in LA for November 10th to start working on the album. But only a week after this phone call, the events of October 21st, 2003 happened. Elliott was home with Jennifer in their Los Angeles apartment. According to Jennifer, the couple were arguing and she ended up locking herself in the bathroom for 5 to 10 minutes to shower. Now, this is merely speculation, what they were arguing about, but there have been a few of Elliott's friends come forward and say that Elliott was planning on leaving Jennifer since they had a bad on and off relationship where they were regularly fighting, and those friends believed he was ending their relationship that day. Again, who knows?
Speculation again.
Yeah, that's what I mean. There's a lot of speculation and hearsay.
Was Jennifer still doing drugs?
I don't know, it doesn't actually discuss if she was doing drugs. While in the shower, Jennifer heard Elliott scream. She walked out of the bathroom to check on him, where she saw Elliott standing with his back to her. Elliott turned around and faced her, which was when Jennifer noticed a knife sticking out of his chest. He was supposedly standing up, conscious and gasping for breath at this time. Jennifer pulled the knife out and noticed that there were 2 knife wounds on his chest. Elliott attempted to walk away and she followed him to where he collapsed.
But out the knife.
She pulled out the knife.
That's the last thing you're doing over there.
The last thing you do, I feel like that's something you learn at a very young age. If something's impaling someone, that keeps everything inside.
Yeah, and how do you know there was 2 stab wounds?
Right? He was wearing a shirt. He was clothed. There would have just been blood from one stab wound
Sort of blood.
everywhere. How did she know that there were 2 stab wounds? I think that's odd too. I have these same questions written down. He was wearing a shirt. There is not a chance. Well, I don't know. I'm not saying not a chance, but I just think it's very unlikely that she would see the other stab wound unless he'd really ripped at his shirt in order to stab himself, kind of thing. Also too, why would he be walking away from her? Walking away from her after stabbing himself, I feel like you'd walk away from someone after they stabbed you, or attempting to walk away from them.
Yeah, you'd be kind of coming close to the nearest person too for help.
Yeah. Well, not even that. Like, if he wants to die, he doesn't want help.
But you're not going to stab yourself in the chest twice.
I don't think so either, personally.
You go off on a cliff or then fucking back to the heroin or something.
There is a lot of much less painful ways to go, and we will go into that in a little while. But also, she said she heard 1 scream. Did he only scream with 1 stab wound? I don't know. There's a lot of things about this that leave me with more questions than answers, to be honest.
I think if you're stabbed, you're going to just keep screaming.
You are going to keep screaming.
I presume that you're going to have to leave out some screech if you're going to fucking stab yourself with a knife. Deliberately or not, like.
Yeah.
I presume it's because the body's natural reactions.
Oh! But also, too, 2 stab wounds. Are there not going to be 2 screams?
I think you'd be just still screaming after the first one.
Yeah, it's all very
But
odd
I
to
don't know,
me.
would you actually pull the knife back out and
And then do it again.
stick in your chest?
That too. I feel like it would be a lot of... Look, medical examiners have confirmed that it was possible for him to have done it himself. I just think you're already so wounded. How do you pull a knife out of your chest? You have to use your chest muscles to pull it out of your chest. Your chest is impaled. Do you have the strength to pull a knife out of your chest and then do it again? I know. It's odd to me. I have a lot of questions about that. And you do too, by the question mark you've just written down.
I hope you'll be able to answer them. I hope you'll be able to answer them.
Oh, don't be asking for too much. So Jennifer called for an ambulance at 12:18 p.m. and performed CPR and first aid on Elliott with the operator's assistance until paramedics arrived and took him to the hospital. Once he was taken off to hospital...
How would you actually do CPR on a person with
stab wounds?
in their chest?
I don't know. I was thinking the same thing.
We should be putting pressure on to keep the blood in,
not putting... Yeah, I have no idea. It was done with the operator's assistance, so unless the operator was explaining exactly what to do, which I feel like they would be doing.
I suppose so. It's either bleed out or get the heart pumping.
The thing is, the more the heart pumps, so he was stabbed directly through the heart, the more the heart pumps, the more blood's leaving his heart. It's horrible. So once Elliott was taken to hospital, police officers arrived to question Jennifer about the incident. She was seated at the kitchen table during this and noted for the first time seeing a post-it note which she said must have been left by Elliott. This was apparently the first time she'd ever seen it. She noted the handwriting to be Elliot's and stated it wasn't there earlier in the day. The post-it note had written on it, supposedly in Elliot's writing, "I'm so sorry, love Elliott, God forgive me." It's actually written, "I'm so sorry, love, Elliott, God forgive me." The note was not dated, and it also doesn't sound like a suicide note. And I feel like a man who is so in touch with his emotions, able to write numerous and numerous songs and lyrics about the way he feels, I don't feel like one little note on a post-it note is consistent with that.
Well, no, I'd say he's a singer. Like, he can express himself. Like, he could write a full Bible if he wanted to, but...
Yeah. And that was his thing. He was like, I wish I could put out music every 6 months, but I just can't.
Especially when he's getting back in, when he's out of clean up. He's getting back into music.
Yeah. So I feel like if he was to do something like that, I feel like there would be music left as like a suicide note more so than a post-it note. "I'm so sorry, God forgive me." It doesn't really...
And was it actually his handwriting?
The only person that confirmed it was his handwriting was Jennifer Chiba. This is not being confirmed by anyone else.
And was there never a case, or was it Jennifer not brought in for questioning, or was she just...
No, it was the one questioning at her table while Elliott was taken off to hospital. Also, too, were you being dragged off to hospital in an ambulance? I, too, would be in an ambulance with you. Not a fucking hope would I just be chilling out at the house while you went off and died.
Well, if you were to stab me twice, I would prefer you weren't in the ambulance with me.
Had you stabbed yourself, I would prefer to be in the ambulance with you.
I was running away from you when you took the knife out of me.
None of it makes sense to me. But yeah, no. Also, why did she tell people he was running away from her? So the knife supposedly used by Elliott was a regular kitchen knife that had been sitting on a cutting board in the kitchen immediately prior to this event. Jennifer told police that Elliott had suffered with depression all of his life and had a long history of multiple narcotics addictions, naming heroin and crack. She stated alcohol abuse, although admitting he had been clean for a year. Why are you telling them about this a year later?
She's just trying to darken his reputation.
It sounds to me like she is trying to darken his reputation. He's been clean a year. He's put in the work. He's proved himself. I don't know. That to me sounds very odd. And to be immediately going, he has depression, all this stuff, very strange to me. During this time with police, she discussed his self-mutilating behaviours, noting he would burn himself with cigarettes. She discussed his history of at least one suicide attempt, but couldn't disclose any details of the event, such as a time frame or circumstances, as she simply didn't know. Also, too, they would have seen scars or marks or something if that were true. There aren't scars and marks, I don't think, noted in the autopsy report, just to clarify, of like cigarette burns.
But I suppose there were any scars or marks on Jennifer when the police came to her.
Jennifer wasn't checked for anything. There was no investigation. There was no investigation as if there was possibly anything other than a suicide.
But it was the house ransacked or stuff
There was
knocked over. Or...
nothing noted at all. I don't think police were investigating this in any capacity for anything other than just, oh, Elliott Smith, he's known for claiming suicidal thoughts, he stabbed himself.
Yeah, but like say, Elliott Smith was a popular fella. Known, he did music in the film industry, he was well known. Mm-hmm. There was this Jennifer York, came from a fucking band, and never done nothing.
Yeah.
Fucking tried to be a bit of a make-believe drug dealer that's supplied with drugs.
Yeah.
And, like, how would I take her word against?
Against what?
Popular musician.
He's dead. He's been claiming for years that he's going to kill himself. And now suddenly he's got 2 stab wounds. I think, if anything, perfect victim.
This is the
2003.
I know, I have it in my notes here. October 21st.
Yeah.
Like, you think that surely a bit of common sense then, like?
Yeah, but...
She was a nobody, like, no one ever heard of her. He was...
I can't say that she was a nobody. I don't know what her success level was compared to his. Regardless, she's there saying he's been claiming he's going to kill himself for years, all this stuff.
Oh, yes, it's grand. Case is closed.
Yeah, it does appear that way. So she also stated he had a consistent history of verbal suicidal ideation and planning, which can partially be confirmed with his music alone, to be fair. A lot of his music does express these ideas. This is also being corroborated by others, so not just Jennifer. And Elliott's publicist even stated, so this was Elliott's publicist since 1995. She stated, when questioned, that she didn't know if he had a history of suicide attempts or suicidal ideation, but said that suicide was what Elliott wrote about and referenced in his songs. So Jennifer stated that Elliott was seeking treatment for depression from several psychiatrists and was being treated with multiple prescription drugs. So I think it was just police came in, open shut case. End of story.
Yeah, but is that a coroner report making this like?
Yes, there is. Just you wait. Also to note, Elliott had received a letter from Charlie that morning, which he had not yet read. The letter ends up being Charlie denying having had any urges to sexually abuse anyone, including Elliott, but also apologised for the general mistreatment of Elliott and his deficiencies as a father. I personally, when it comes to this, he knew that there was a letter from Charlie and he didn't read it yet. If you have all these emotions inside, this is just my take and everyone has their own takes, but if you have all these emotions inside about what happened to you as a child at the hands of this man, and you think your plan that day is to kill yourself, because he didn't just wake up one day, like it wasn't just a sudden thought. He knew that whole day, I'm sure, that he was going to do it, right? And he didn't even so much as open the letter, because at that point, nothing can hurt you. If you're going to die anyway, Nothing can hurt you. So why not open the letter and just read it?
That Charlie was only getting back to know because he knows he's going to hit fame again. He's starting back in his career. He's taking his career serious.
That's always
Charlie
possible
saying,
too. That's 100% possible too. I just think Elliott, I just think I, as a person, if I knew I was going to kill myself that day, a little bit of closure would be nice. Just hearing what their final words would be nice to me.
No, if I was going to do myself, say if I did, or if I was going to think I was going to get murdered, I'd make sure that letter was never opened.
Just to be spiteful.
Spiteful, precisely.
Okay, yeah, look. I don't know, different views, but...
Like, shove that letter right up your arse. That's from my perspective, sorry.
Now, at the hospital, Elliott had arrived with 2 lacerations to the heart, which were surgically repaired. However, despite receiving medical intervention, he coded, and Elliott Smith was pronounced dead at 1:36 p.m. that same day. Elliott's death was reported as a suicide. However, the official autopsy report that was released in December that year didn't conclusively state this and actually left open the question of homicide. Also, too, Elliott's autopsy report can be easily found online for anyone curious out there. I've found it a really interesting read. I read the whole thing. I've never read an entire autopsy report in my life. So, in this report, the examiner noted 2 apparent single-edged stab wounds on the center of Elliott's chest while visually examining the body. There were no hesitation marks surrounding either wound. There was a small, slight laceration to the palm of his left hand and another slight laceration under the upper right arm as well. No additional external trauma was noted on this examination. So does that mean they're not seeing ash wounds, like cigarette burn marks?
Yeah, you think the laceration of these hands are self-defense?
They would be consistent with self-defense wounds. And
I'm not coroner, but...
The medical examiner's opinion was that each stab wound was fatal, as both entered the chest cavity. Toxicology or revealed no illicit substances in Elliott's system. All were prescribed medications by his doctor for depression and ADHD. I would also like to add that some people were trying to state that he'd relapsed around this time, which is obviously proven false, and that he'd stopped taking his prescribed medications, also proven not true.
Right, yeah. They said the 2 stab wounds were fatal, so 2 of them had to go equally as deep as each other.
Yeah. Well, both entered the chest.
Yeah, but coroner's report that 2 stab wounds were
fatal.
Both were.
I think the whole idea is that he would have died of just one of those. Either one of those could have killed him.
You're not going to do 2 fatal stab wounds yourself. You're not going to have the energy to do a second stab wound yourself.
No, you'd think.
Not if you're going to
and still be standing.
Not if you killed yourself with the first one.
The thing I also think too, I could never in my life stab myself. The pain, excruciating, all of that. He stayed standing to stab himself twice. Jennifer Chiba walked out and he was standing with his back to her. And when he turned around, supposedly, he had a knife hanging out of his chest from the second stab wound. How do you stay standing up while you stab yourself?
And was there any evidence of anyone else being in the apartment?
Anyone else besides Jennifer Chiba? That was never looked into. But remember, this was never really looked into as a homicide, unfortunately.
Like that saying, it was Jennifer. She was probably first on the scene, but...
Could it someone else? I don't believe there was any indication that there was anyone else there.
I can imagine like that, after all he's abused Elliott himself, that he wouldn't probably be a big physical strong man.
You think he was a big...
He wouldn't be.
No, he's a...
Light, feeble, kind of.
And he spent...
Not long out of rehab.
Ages on heroin, eating nothing but ice cream, barely sleeping.
Yeah, so he wouldn't be.
He's only a little.
So, yeah. Probably wouldn't take much. Maybe. Would a woman stab him? Would he be strong enough to...
fight her up?
No, but would he be strong enough to physically stab himself?
Well, that too. Clean for a year.
That's what's doing. Like, did Jennifer want him stabbed? Yeah, look, there was no case put into it.
No, it's very frustrating, but the medical examiner's report stated that the mode of death is undetermined at this time.
But it's still an open case.
It's still technically an open case. Well, it's not an open case because they're not investigating it, but it's an undetermined case. No, it's just left undetermined. No one can actually state for a fact that Elliott Smith killed himself to this day, 21 years later.
But look, they could probably say the same about Michael Jackson. They could say that's still an open case.
I guess it is.
I doubt the doctors.
So, the report stated, quote, while his history of depression is compatible with suicide, and the location and direction of the stab wounds are consistent with self-infliction, several aspects of the circumstances, as are known at this time, are atypical of suicide and raise the possibility of homicide. These include the absence of hesitation wounds, stabbing through clothing, and the presence of small incised wounds on the right arm and left hand, possible defensive wounds. Additionally, the girlfriend's reported removal of the knife and subsequent refusal to speak with detectives are all of concern. Since a complete knowledge of the circumstances surrounding the stabbing is lacking, the mode will remain undetermined until such time as sufficient additional information becomes available. Now, that was dated the 6th of January 2004, which is like 3-4 months later. Why did police then not investigate to confirm? Take her in for questioning. Ask her a few questions.
First of all, had he no family at this stage?
He did. His family is still active. His sister Ashley and Gary, his father, and his stepmother, I believe he's still very close with. I think he was working on a relationship with his mother, and Charlie was sending him like letters. He had people that cared about him around his life.
Not care enough to sprint with the suicide thing.
We will kind of touch on it. I do think his family have been suspicious all these years, but they've never made a public report about this. They've never addressed this publicly in any sense.
And actually, like even the whole coroner's report, the whole case is just...
Isn't it terrible? Like, it's clear indication that things are inconclusive. They can't determine for a fact that he committed suicide, and police never investigated. How does that even occur?
Does someone get away with murder?
Is someone getting away with a murder? But also, it indicated in the report that it's more likely homicide than it is suicide, and still no investigation pursued.
Right, is that the American justice system?
I don't know. That's insane to me. I'll also state that bladed weapon accounts for between 1.6 to 3% of all suicides and is extremely uncommon in Western cultures where other less painful means are accessible. I think, especially him knowing, like having had previous use of drugs, why would he not? I'm not trying to this is a better way to kill yourself.
If he was doing $1,500 of drugs a day, Jesus Christ, at that one suicide attempt.
Okay, then try different drugs. Try $1,500 worth of different drugs. I just think...
I say this immune to drugs.
Alright, well then guns are allowed in America. We're not saying this as do this and don't stab yourself. But there are so many less painful ways than that.
That's not applaudable at all that you would stab yourself in the heart twice.
It doesn't seem right at all, does it?
Not at all. No matter what kind of a psycho or if you're being clean. I hope.
No. Now, there is a lot of speculation that Jennifer removed the knife from his chest to account for her fingerprints being on the knife in that exact pattern they would be in after stabbing someone, as opposed to how they would present if chopping up food. But I feel like there's no reason to pull a knife out anyway.
No, that's the last you do.
I feel like every person in the world is taught in some capacity that leaving it in keeps everything inside. Do you remember when Steve Irwin passed away?
Mm.
And he'd pulled the stingray out? I feel like this is a very Australian thing to be saying. So he pulled it out. And I remember I was very young. I can't remember what year he passed away, but I know I was very young. I do remember, even at such a young age, I was there thinking, why did he pull it out? And you could argue that he would have died regardless.
The episode is a natural reaction, but...
Well, natural reaction possibly too. But that was a thing that I knew at such a young age. You leave whatever's impaling you in because that's the only thing blocking everything from coming out.
Yeah, but we're supposed to you just you see somebody sticking you, just first you just get it out.
Maybe.
But that's your own reaction, own body reaction.
Mm.
Not if I see you with a knife stuck in you and I'm gonna
pull it out. Yeah, true. Yeah.
It's all your own pain. You see something stuck in you want to pull it out.
Yeah, I get that. But also, too, the issue is she was never questioned on these things by police, so we'll never know why she chose to pull out that knife or anything. It's very frustrating. So Jennifer was never officially interviewed about his death by police. It was just the one, around a table directly following, while she should have been at the hospital with him. But anyway, that's my own personal views.
Well, if he was still alive, I suppose, yeah.
He was alive long enough to receive surgery to repair the lacerations, and she wasn't there. I think that's a bit telling. But even if she wasn't seen as a potential murderer at this time, she still needs to thoroughly express what happened that day as to bring closure to the family if Elliott did, in fact, commit suicide. It's the same story. We were arguing, I went in for a shower, I came out, he had a knife in his chest. The only interview that was ever done was the one in their home, as I said. So there's just never any closure for anyone, really.
Yeah, I suppose.
Trash.
I didn't say trash. It don't make any sense. It's like, I don't know, maybe. Look, maybe he did stab himself twice, but
Maybe he did. And I'm definitely not saying she's definitely a murderer. Whether I think that or not.
well, maybe she was in the show, maybe someone else might have came in.
Maybe. But I just think there's so much.
But you look, there was nothing investigating to, so like, there's nothing to work off of.
No. But regardless, the medical examiner couldn't rule out homicide, and Jennifer wasn't properly questioned. Wild. I just think her being questioned would have ruled out any doubt about it being a suicide, and an official mode of death could have been released, which I think would have been easier on the family and everything as well. Especially given that due to the autopsy report, there were more indications of it being a homicidal death than a suicide. I think closure was needed for this in order for her to be a good person.
But are they just partners or were they married?
They weren't married, just partners.
So like she would have nothing really to gain from his death.
No, he lived in her home, and I do have a feeling she thought she would be able to get things out of him in the case that he did die. I don't know if she thought she would be left in a will or something like that. I do get the impression, not to say she killed him, I do get the impression that she thought she would be left something, which she was not.
But did she gain out of his death?
No, but we will get into that. So Larry Crane, who, if you remember, was coming to make the music of it in November, also stated that it seemed surreal for Elliott to call for help finishing an album and then kill himself a week later, which I agree to. Why? Like, I've discussed this before. I only have training in mental health first aid, which is like suicide prevention. But one main indicator is that people planning on killing themselves don't make plans for the future. Because why would they make plans for something they know they're not going to see? Like, what a joke to everyone around them, what a joke to themselves. They don't make plans. Generally, not to say everyone. So Larry stated that he spoke to Jennifer after Elliott's death and she was shattered and in tears. Apparently, Jennifer said, "I don't understand. He was so healthy." My take is that due to his history of voicing his thoughts on suicide and sad music, he was an easy victim to blame on a suicide. It does sound like he was getting his life back at the time, and suicide wouldn't have been on his mind.
Not he was planning recording another album and cleaning up. Like if he was just had to pack you up, fuck life. I just go back on the drink and drugs. And
You would go back on the drink and drugs, would you not?
If you're that depressed,
you wouldn't be going through rehab and this and that. There are times in his past where had it happened, I would have been like, yeah, that makes sense. Height, drinking drugs.
Before he went into rehab, he'd say, Jesus Christ.
Before getting clean, before making all these plans, he was actively working on an album. He was almost done. I have questions on that part personally. There was more times in his life where I would have expected this out of him than this time. Also, too, say if his friend was correct in that Elliott was planning on breaking up with Jennifer that day. Remember how I said that was what was speculated? She definitely would have gotten more out of him dead than not with him at all, if we're just making speculations on things.
Yeah, I suppose. True.
Now, I have discussed before that people become happier when knowing they're towards the end of their life. But yeah, I just don't know why he would focus on getting clean and putting out a new album. He was making songs for movies at this time as well. There just seemed to be too much positive going on in his life for the happiness to be because he thought his life was coming to an end. In my opinion, again, Now, posthumously, 2 more albums of Elliot's were released, one being the one he was working on at the time, From a Basement on the Hill, and it was released in 2004. The other one was formed from all these different songs he had been working on for years, called New Moon, and was released in 2007 by his family after they picked out his songs that they wanted to add from years and years of him working and having recorded random music that he never put into albums. They made their own album. Numerous books and documentaries have been released on Elliott following his death. So many people had such fond memories of him, remembering what a kind soul he was. There have been mentions of quite a few people not liking Jennifer, and some were unwilling to state her name when talking about her, but it was clear that they were discussing her as if she was some horrific person that came into Elliot's life, attempting to control him and get his money, allegedly. Elliott was cremated, with his ashes being divided between his mother, father, and sister Ashley. I think it's odd that Jennifer didn't get any of his ashes. But did she want them? Did she ask, did she try for them?
Yeah, but I suppose, look, he wasn't with her that long, they weren't married.
Well, supposedly she'd known him since 99, and regardless, they'd lived together for over a year. And they weren't married. I don't think that changes things.
But sure, look, if she did have anything to do with the murder, would you want the ashes?
If she did have anything to do with the murder, well, I mean, she might have wanted his ashes as a trophy or something.
She might be able to sell them.
Well, selling them too. But also too, I don't know, I just think it's odd that she never got any of his ashes. I don't know. It's probably not for everyone anyway. Odd to me.
No, they don't your ashes, you do.
Okay, why are you saying when?
I
I heard what you said.
It's a true crime podcast.
Okay.
I
don't know. It's an odd situation. Who knows? Everyone reacts differently. So Jennifer began taking interviews in 2004. In one interview, she stated, "If I was a suspect, I would have heard from the investigators, for one thing. Another is that his sister and his parents and everyone close to him knows the truth. So I'm not worried about it. The media are just looking for some sort of sensationalistic angle that will sell their publications. In my mind, there's no question as to what happened, and there's no need to put that kind of spin on it."
So she's denying it and nothing about it.
Yeah. Well, she's denying it, even though, no, it's clearly being speculated, but police haven't come and questioned her on it. But it's being speculated. The autopsy report was leaked. No, not leaked. It was released to the public. People are able to read it. He had hundreds and, he had fans wanting answers, Now, I'm not sure if this was in the same interview or a different one, but also in 2004, Jennifer stated in another interview, or a interview, that Elliott's difficult childhood was partly why he needed to sedate himself with drugs as an adult. She stated he remembered traumatic things from his childhood, parts of things it's not my place to say. What? First off, I think it's really fucking shit in his death to continuously bring up his drug use. When he'd been clean, he'd put in the effort and he'd gotten past that. I think that's shit.
Yes, look, she's brought up, she was using that from
day one
when, supposedly, suicide or murder.
Yeah. With the police from minutes after his death, or minutes after the attack or the stabbing.
And he 12 months out of rehab.
Yeah.
Starting new album.
He had so much positivity going on in his life, and she just wants to delve on this. And I think that's shit. Regardless, even if I find out tomorrow conclusively she's innocent, I still think what she has done in his death is fucking shit. Like dragging his name through the mud and trying to just remind everyone of that.
I know. Look, it's the way you have the case done. It sounds like it was not suicide. It's down to lack of, means from the police department or detective department or
all departments.
How's the other report?
It was just the autopsy report.
The autopsy report. You think that's enough for the police or detectives to work on?
Yeah. You'd think that's when they'd go, oh, okay, they can't conclude it as definitely being a suicide, so let's investigate. What? I'm confused by that personally.
Well, if a person can stab themselves in the heart twice, it's the first I ever heard of. You stick your finger into something once and it comes out sore and you have to stick it back in again.
Your analogies are always amazing.
That's true.
Yeah. I get what you're saying. So, from that interview, she seemed to be pointing the blame at Charlie. Ashley, Elliot's sister, came forward stating she doesn't know of its accuracy, but Elliot's biggest wish was not to hurt his mum, and these comments cause her so much pain. She expressed knowing of rough times in Elliot's childhood, but stating all anyone can ever do is apologize and change, and those things have both happened. She said that she can testify to that, which my take on that, like, it's a cryptic message. My take and a lot of other people's take was that she kind of almost confirmed Elliot's abuse at the hands of Charlie, which Charlie has admitted to as well, minus the sexual abuse. But she also noted that Charlie obviously stopped those actions and never treated Ashley or Darren that way, which I think is a positive.
You know what I'm saying? They were just never much good, and even that they didn't force an inquiry into his death. It just shows how they stood back again.
Is that a thing, though, that the family could have forced that, though?
But if his fans are trying to force it, you truly think that his family be the first ones to...
They've just never said anything publicly. That's not to say that they haven't been doing things
You
behind the
see
scenes.
the Americans, like, they fucking love to be shouty about something.
You've got to stop blaming Americans. They're like our second most popular country.
Yeah, go on, Americans. He shout, he go for your rights. Trump back in.
Jesus, Paul.
Or Harris, if you like Harris. Either one. Whichever one you like.
Now, Elliott's family, including both of his parents and their spouses, have never come forward to make any comments about his death in any capacity, even so much as confirming it as a suicide. But the family lawyer stated that the family didn't want anyone talking publicly about the family's thoughts on the death, clearly talking about Jennifer. So after Elliott's death, all of his assets remained with his estate, which his stepmother, Marta Greenwald, became the administrator of. Jennifer received nothing from his death. So Jennifer attempted to discuss with the family that she was promised to be looked after forever by Elliott, but they didn't give her anything. I believe his death was still being classed as suspicious, and her being the only person home at that time, like, that didn't help the case for her. I do think Marta in particular is suspicious of Jennifer, but they didn't want to help her. So Jennifer filed an action against Marta Greenwald on the 30th of July 2004 in the Los Angeles Supreme Court. Mind you, he's not gone a year yet. Not even a year.
Jennifer's looking for
a payout.
Her share.
Yeah. In her testimony, she claimed she'd met Elliott in the summer of 1999 and began a romantic relationship with him. Again, his friends tell a different story. She claimed on August 26, 2002, Elliott moved into Jennifer's apartment in LA, where they lived together until his death. She alleged that August, when he first moved in, she and Elliott entered into an oral agreement under which the two decided to live together and combine their earnings, all of which would be shared equally, whether earned through individual or combined effort. Jennifer claimed she agreed to render her services as a homemaker, housekeeper, and cook for Elliott and forego any independent career opportunities to devote her full time to those duties, essentially. She stated, as well as household duties, she was involved in Elliott's business by being his secretary, bookkeeper, and financial counselor. She claimed Elliott had agreed to provide for all of her financial needs and support her for the rest of her life in return. Jennifer also alleged the part of the agreement was to act as Elliott's manager and agent for the purpose of arranging the bookings and schedulings of appearances for Elliott's musical performances, for which Elliott would give her 15% of all proceeds earned and received on such performances. She claimed all of this was discussed in one conversation when he moved into her home. It was her home that they lived in.
So this is a conversation we have. We'll just move in. We'll have one conversation
Before, yeah. But not prior to him moving in. After him moving in, apparently. Now, also too, a talent agent with qualifications and, you know, a lot of experience and all this stuff, their commission is usually around 10% for, like, bookings and everything. She's not qualified in any capacity. She has nothing, no licensing, no nothing. And she's wanting 15% of her husband's work. Oh, not her husband, sorry. Her boyfriend's work. Yeah. Which I just think, that's a lot.
Yeah, but look, start high.
So Jennifer stated, following that discussion, she became involved in arranging the booking and scheduling of his performances, and that he engaged in 20 performances from that discussion up until his death. Jennifer claimed she initiated contact with these venues or received phone calls for bookings and communicated with these people in order to schedule the performances. She testified that for all of these engagements, she was involved in negotiations for Elliot's fee, as in working as a manager. Just to clarify, do you not think within those 14 months he would have paid her for that if that was their arrangement? But she's claiming that she needs to be paid.
But she said she was doing the accounts.
Yeah, but she's not paying herself, apparently.
Well, no.
I don't know.
She's not basically all accounts, is she?
I don't know. The whole thing's crazy. So she's there trying to claim money for what she'd done during this time period as if she hadn't been paid at the time for it. Who knows? I really don't know. It's very fickle.
Or was it just a little notebook like mine?
Even now, there is a labour code in the Talent Agencies Act that states that no person shall engage in or carry on the occupation of a talent agency without first procuring a licence from the Labour Commissioner. This is obviously to protect artists by preventing improper persons from financially benefiting off artists' work as a talent agent. Now, Jennifer may or may not have acted as a talent agent at this time without any licensing, which you can only actually do for yourself and not even for a partner, a spouse, none of it. You can only do for solely yourself. But a spouse must also be licensed to procure employment for the artist. It's simply the law. So even if you were an artist in America, I could not go over and be your manager. Even if you're like, oh, I trust you. Oh, look.
Okay. Sorry, I go over that. Good luck.
I'd be a good manager.
That'd be fucking stabbing straight away.
Would not be. This oral agreement was declared void as it was a violation of the Act, and Jennifer was barred from recovering payments for any of these 20 shows. Again, claiming that she'd not received any form of payment for any 20. On November 1st, 2004, Jennifer filed a first amended complaint which omitted any allegations that she had agreed to act or acted as Elliot's manager or agent. She also omitted any claim for commission on his earnings for any performances he did during this time, though she kept in all other allegations that came of their oral agreement, that she was a homemaker, housekeeper, cook, financial counsellor, bookkeeper, and secretary to Elliott, and that he'd promised to look after her for the rest of her life. Jennifer alleged that Marta, as administrator of Elliot's estate, breached this agreement to provide for her financial needs and support her for the rest of her life, which resulted in damages in excess of $1 million. Elliot's estate filed a petition in January 2005 to determine controversy, claiming since Jennifer obtained work for Elliott without a talent agency license, as she'd previously testified to doing, that the entire oral agreement is void from its inception, taking away any of Jennifer's rights under that agreement. Jennifer tried claiming that with her first amended complaint, she abandoned the prior claim for compensation as an acting manager and was only seeking recovery for the activities in which she didn't need a license, and that the Talent Agency Act cannot apply to deny her right to the separate acts. Right? So claiming that she wasn't a talent agent, she just did all the other house-making stuff. However, they were seen as non-compensable.
Compensable.
As they were mixed with activities which do require a license, and Jennifer had already claimed they all happened in the one conversation where they came to this oral agreement. The fact that Jennifer abandoned her prior claim for commissions was deemed irrelevant. So because this all was part of the one conversation, had she said they were in separate conversations, she'd have been fine. She said this was all the one conversation they had when Elliott first moved in. That was her big mistake. So it was ordered that the oral agreement between Elliott and Jennifer be void from its inception in its entirety, and that Jennifer has no enforceable rights thereunder. So big denied under Jennifer's name. Now, a year later, Jennifer tried amending this again and was further denied rights to compensation in any capacity with them, again stating that all activities were mixed with activities needing a license and could not be severed. Jennifer then went on to sue her lawyer that she used in the case for malpractice and negligence, purely because she didn't win the case. Apparently, her lawyers missed the deadline for a review in the case, and that was why she didn't win the case. That case against her lawyer was dismissed in 2009.
Surprise.
Death affects everyone so differently, but I just think in someone's death are you there trying to sue everyone you can?
She's trying to gain.
She's trying to gain out of his death. So, yeah, to me, she just seems super money hungry. And given that everything following his death seemed to revolve around her obtaining his money in some way or another, I don't think it sounds like someone with no involvement in his death. I just feel like she thought she would get something out of him dying, and when she didn't, that's when she had to fight for it.
So she was just fighting a losing battle.
She was, thankfully, but say, had she stated that they had two separate conversations, one was about her being his manager and one was about her doing all the housework and everything, they were completely different dates. One was a few days later, she could have won. Her stating that they all happened in the same day was kind of what ruined that case for her. Which, thank God, I don't think she deserved any of his money.
No, look, definitely not. Well, then again, who knows what's the truth?
No, but I think also too, if he wanted her to have his money in his death, he would have left it to her. However, if Jennifer did kill Elliott, she gained practically nothing apart from a little notoriety out of his death. And her band, Happy Ending, broke up. She is now in a band called Hello Menno, but she actually works as a therapist, mainly. It's like a children's therapist and stuff.
Has she a license?
She does have a license for that. She's completely qualified. But back to Elliott, he really only cared about the music. Fame or money never really seemed to matter to him, with him sharing comments in interviews referencing that it would be nice for him to hear his own music on the radio, but he does what he does because he likes playing music. I think part of what made him so good in a lot of people's eyes were that he didn't really seem to care what others thought of what he was making. He just made music, and whatever happened after that happened. A lot of his music he never even released. It was like for him, that was his special, like I said, diary, all this stuff. Elliott Smith has since been regarded as one of the most influential artists in indie music. Many artists have attributed him as their influences, such as Frank Ocean and Billie Eilish. He'll also always be known as a sensitive, gifted musician who created some of the most delicate melodies with hauntingly beautiful lyrics that gave his audience a taste of something a little dark in him, but I think it's a darkness that everyone has in some capacity. I don't necessarily think it was a darkness that took his life, but that's the story of Elliott Smith.
Yeah, as I said, that would be fair man to stab yourself twice.
Yeah, I think it's interesting.
I don't know if Jennifer was able to do it. I don't know.
If they were breaking up.
If they were going to break up, she would be better off staying with him and wait for his new album to get out.
Yeah. Look, it's interesting, isn't it? Who knows? One of those things I do, you just want the answers, and I wish it was investigated properly because I think the world deserves the answers. Not even the world, his family deserves the answers.
There's like this, so there was no investigation. There was a case there for investigation. It was investigated into.
Yeah.
Did they see a reason why they weren't investigating into? I don't know.
If so, it wasn't disclosed, but yeah. I would also love to know anyone else's opinions on the case. I think it would be good to hear other people's thoughts. And you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Links are posted in the notes. So that is everything I have on the case of Elliott Smith.
That was an interesting case. Can't wait for the next one.
Well, we will see you next week. Have a lovely week.
Ciao.
Bye.